It's 1389. The First Battle of Kosovo had just concluded with an Ottoman victory. The Serbs and the Bosnians are crushed, and the way is open to Hungary. This is quite remarkable because less than a century ago, the Ottomans ruled nothing more than a small province in western Anatolia. In just 50 years, they had grown powerful, subsuming several small states and parts of the dying Byzantine Empire. More importantly, they gained a foothold in Europe. As fate had it, around the same time, the two principal powers in the region, Bulgaria and Serbia, fragment into several feuding principalities. This lack of unity was exactly what the Ottomans needed. Unlike the comfortable and complacent Christians, their state is set up for one thing alone: war. One by one, the Bulgarian and Serbian principalities are consumed, and the Byzantines also don't fare any better. While this was going on, Hungary still enjoyed a golden age under its Angevin rulers. So much so that King Louis I could even indulge in such luxuries as a dynastic war in Naples or crusades against pagans in Bosnia and Lithuania. Fighting the Turk falls to his successor, Sigismund of Luxembourg. Sigismund takes the throne in 1387, and by 1390 he already has to face bands of Ottoman irregulars pillaging the border region. To counter this, a grand coalition of Hungarians, Poles, Burgundians, Italians and Wallachians is formed. But the Crusaders barely manage to reach south of the Danube when they are catastrophically defeated at Nicopolis. After this failure, Sigismund resigns himself to go on the defensive. To this end, he orders a series of fortifications to be built on the southern border of Hungary. To augment these, Sigismund initiates a program of partnership with the rulers of the small states along the border, rewarding them with land grants in Hungary in return for their cooperation. This mostly works in the case of Serbia, but the alliance with Wallachia proves to be volatile, and the one with Bosnia impossible, as the kingdom has been lacking central authority for a while. In fact, the Ottomans already exert such pressure that the rulers of these small states find it extremely hard not to submit. The Ottoman Empire had already set up the first standing army in the 1360s, something unheard of in contemporary Europe. Its core is formed by the Janissaries. The Janissaries are an elite force of light infantry, known for their excellent discipline, resilience and loyalty to the Sultan. They are armed with bows and sabers and various other armaments. Their role on the battlefield is to act as an immovable block of infantry that can nonetheless go on the attack at a moment's notice. The Janissaries are augmented by a small number of household cavalry, who are almost as well armored as Western knights. They are armed with bows, lances, sabers and shields. The most numerous section of the professional army is made up of the Spahi cavalry. Like Western knights, the Spahi draw their income from a landed estate. But unlike them, they don't own these estates. Land in the Ottoman Empire is the property of the Sultan, and the Spahi can only use it on a transactional basis. This ensures very high standards of readiness and unconditional loyalty to the Sultan. The Spahi are likewise armed with lance, bow, saber and shield, and act as light cavalry on the wings of the army. Additionally to these professional soldiers, there are also an equal number of irregulars. The Akinji are light cavalry armed with bows and saber and whatever else they could find. Their counterpart in the infantry are the Azabs, armed with bows and sabers. These irregulars are throwaways on the battlefield, however their capacity to raid and harass the enemy is immeasurable. They are the ones responsible for the early raids against Hungary. Hundreds or even thousands of Akinji can be mobilized at a few days' notice, descending unobserved on the border regions. Robbery, rape, arson and enslavement follow, and by the time the Hungarians mobilize, the Akinji are long gone. Opposing them, Hungary in the 15th century is a far cry from the superpower that it was in the 14th century. Similarly to the Ottoman sultans, the Angevin kings used to own almost all the land in the country, with very few large hereditary states to go around. Additionally to this, they were the sole proprietors of Europe's largest gold mines and salt mines. As a result, Hungarian kings could act independently and decisively, never lacking the funds to field an army. All this changed under the rule of Sigismund of Luxembourg. Sigismund had to contend for the throne with the king of Naples, and the support of the nobility did not come cheap. By the time Sigismund became the undisputed king of Hungary, the royal domain was decimated. Powerful families who backed him carved out hereditary estates the size of provinces for themselves. Besides being King of Hungary, Sigismund is also elected Holy Roman Emperor and King of Bohemia. But these titles help him very little. Getting money from the German princes is next to impossible, and the Czech lands are a veritable disaster. The Hussite wars that last from 1419 to 1434 consume vast resources that would be sorely needed for the defense of the southern border. Thus, the Ottoman raids continue as the Kingdom of Hungary loses the initiative and the confidence of its allies. These are the times when John Hunyadi commences his meteoric rise. Hunyadi was born around 1407. His origins are obscure, but his family is believed to have come from Wallachia after his father entered Sigismund's service. Hunyad Castle and a respectable estate were granted to them in 1409. This is from where the family takes its name. Another theory that cannot be confirmed states that John Hunyadi is in fact Sigismund's illegitimate child. But regardless of his origins, the young Hunyadi was looking forward to a very bright future. In the 1430s, Hunyadi accompanied Sigismund on long tours of Italy and Bohemia, where he familiarized himself with the warfare of the Italian condottieri and the Czech Hussites. He also spent extended periods in the south, learning the hit-and-run light cavalry tactics of the Turks. By the end of the decade, the situation in the south turns from bad to worse. In 1437, a peasants' revolt devastates Transylvania. Exploiting this, the Ottomans team up with the Wallachians and launch a devastating raid. 1 year later, in 1439, they capture Smederevo, the last major fortress in Serbian hands. They can do this with impunity because under the new King Albert, royal authority and the defense of the southern realm become even weaker. To remedy this, Albert names Hunyadi Bán of Szerény. Szerény is the worst place to be in Hungary. In 1429, Sigismund had granted the province to the Teutonic Knights, and it only took the Ottomans and the Wallachians 3 years to kick them out. The upside is that the commission elevates Hunyadi into the ranks of the high nobility. But his star really begins to rise after the death of King Albert. Albert had left no male heir, only a pregnant wife. The Hungarian nobles decide that they would be better off if they elected the 16-year-old King of Poland Vladislaus than going with an unborn child who might not even be a boy. But as it turns out, the child is a boy, and to the bane of historians he is called Ladislaus. For ease of comprehension, we shall call him by his Hungarian name László. Even though László is just a baby, he is fully legitimate, unlike Vladislaus, who has no legal claim whatsoever to the throne. Predictably, a civil war breaks out between two leagues of the barons. The one declaring for Vladislaus is supported by Hunyadi, while the one for László is led by Ulrich von Cilli, a creature of Sigismund and one of the most powerful nobles in the country. Since László is also Archduke of Austria and King of Bohemia, he additionally has two other powerful backers, Frederick III, Holy Roman Emperor, and Jan Žižka. Of these two, Žižka, the captain of a large Hussite war party, proves to be the most dangerous. Acting on behalf of László, he occupies most of Upper Hungary, thereby usurping 2/3 of Hungary's income from gold mines. Thus, Ladislaus turns out to be an even more impoverished king than Sigismund or Albert had been. Nonetheless, the greater part of the nobility stands by him. In 1441, Hunyadi achieves a decisive victory over the forces fighting for László, and thus becomes the favorite of the king. Ladislaus names him captain of the southern frontier and voivode of Transylvania, also lavishing him with grants of land so he can maintain an army. While the Hungarians were busy fighting their civil war, in 1440 the Ottomans had attempted to capture Belgrade. Belgrade is the largest and most important fortress on the border and the key to Hungary itself. Whether by a miracle or due to their still meager experience in siege warfare, the Ottomans failed to take the castle. This is an important wake-up call for Hungarians. Therefore, as soon as Hunyadi takes office, he goes on the offensive. In 1441, he launches a devastating raid into Ottoman-controlled Serbia, designed to provoke the Sultan. Local Ottoman forces try to block his retreat, but Hunyadi crushes them with ease. The Sultan prepares his revenge for the next year. In 1442, most of the king's forces are fighting Žižka's army of Hussites in the north. Feeling confident that he can deal with Hunyadi alone, Murad II dispatches 2 armies of Akinjis backed up by regular troops and artillery. One is sent to besiege the Bosnian fortress of Srebrenik, the other to raid Transylvania. Unaware of where the Ottomans would strike, Hunyadi bides his time, gathering his forces close to Belgrade, but not far enough from Transylvania. Most of his army is made up of light cavalry called the Hussars. The Hussars are armed and armored similarly to the Spahis. They carry a long lance, a large irregular shield, a saber and maybe a warhammer. The Hussars are nimble on the battlefield, but they can also charge in a solid block and press home the advantage. Another type of light cavalry, provided by the Székelys and the Kumans, is armed in the traditional horse archer fashion, with bow and saber. The light cavalry is backed up by an elite force of men-at-arms. These soldiers are encased head to toe in plate armor, they ride powerful horses, and charge with such ferocity that no Ottoman cavalry can stand in their way. Cavalry makes up 80 to 90% of the Hungarian army and the forces of their Christian allies, for the simple reason that in the raids and counter-raids of border warfare, infantry would be of little use. Nonetheless, Hunyadi also introduces a new type of soldier, the Hussite and his war wagon. These soldiers, armed in the Czech fashion, fight from wagons reinforced with crossbows and firearms. On the battlefield, they can form up at a moment's notice into an unassailable wall of men and wagons. Their role is to protect the flanks and the rear, while mixed groups of light and heavy cavalry take care of business. With this force, Hunyadi waits patiently, all the while monitoring the Ottomans' every move. The Turks enter Transylvania and manage to defeat a small army hastily gathered by the local lords. Then they march south and lay siege to the city of Sevan. Once thwarted, they begin their retreat, laden with loot and slaves. Hunyadi anticipates their move and blocks their way at the foot of the Carpathian Mountains. He uses his war wagons to guard his flanks and charges the Ottoman center with his cavalry. Meanwhile, the pursuers from Sevan arrive and catch the Ottomans in a pincer, completely annihilating them. After the battle, Hunyadi wastes no time and marches into Wallachia, ousting Vlad and installing the pro-Hungarian Basarab. The Sultan is furious, and in the same year, 1442, he dispatches the Pasha of Rumelia with a very large force comprising Spahis and Janissaries. The Ottomans enter Wallachia unopposed and despoil the land in all directions. Meanwhile, Hunyadi patiently gathers his forces across the Carpathians. When the time is right, he crosses into Wallachia and catches the Ottomans as they attempt to cross the Danube. Again, he uses his war wagons to cover his flanks, then charges in with his cavalry. Once more, the Ottomans are annihilated. Then Hunyadi further exploits his victory, launching successful raids into Bulgaria and Serbia early next year. Since Hunyadi took charge, the Ottomans have seen nothing but defeat. War had been moved from Hungary into the enemy's lands, giving the Ottomans a taste of their own medicine. This doesn't go unnoticed in Hungary and beyond. Vladislaus' position becomes secure, and the league headed by Hunyadi is supreme. Abroad, Hunyadi is hailed as the champion of Christianity. Pope Eugenius IV calls for a crusade and sends his papal legate Cardinal Cesarini to conduct peace talks between Vladislaus and the backers of László. Cilly and Jiskra agree to maintain the peace, but refrain from making any contributions towards the campaign. Some foreign help arrives from Poland, Burgundy, the Pope and Venice, while Serbia and Wallachia promise to contribute sizable contingents. If this wasn't enough, Murad II also has to fight the Karamanid rebels in Anatolia. When Hunyadi sets out with around 25,000 soldiers in October 1443, most of Murad's forces are still in Anatolia. Speed is the key, so the plan calls for Hunyadi to ride ahead with the main force, while the king follows at 1 day's distance with a smaller force. They face little opposition on their way and take Niš with ease. Here, however, 3 Ottoman armies converge on Hunyadi simultaneously from 3 directions, hoping to catch the Hungarians in a pincer. Hunyadi is unfazed and immediately sees the opportunity offered by this situation. In lightning strikes, he defeats all 3 armies, one after the other, before they could unite and concentrate their forces. The Ottomans are scattered, but they soon regroup and launch an attack on the king's forces. Hunyadi quickly turns around and, together with the king's contingent, catches the Ottomans in a pincer, utterly annihilating them. After this, they proceed unopposed and reach Sofia in November. In the meantime, Murad had concluded peace in Anatolia and now begins to shift his armies back to Europe. But even so, he doesn't have adequate forces to face Hunyadi in open battle. If the Christians can clear the last mountain passes, the way would be open to Edirne, the Ottoman capital. To prevent this, Murad throws in all he has in a desperate attempt to block the passes. This tactic works, and Hunyadi is finally stopped at the Zlatica Pass in December. By now, Hunyadi's army is exhausted, so he decides that they had done enough for this year and orders a retreat. The Ottomans try to pursue them, but Hunyadi lays an ambush near Niš, destroying a large force of Akinjis. Seeing this, the Ottomans give up all attempts at pursuit, and the Christians make it back to Hungary. The Long March, as it became known, didn't achieve much, but it did prove Hunyadi's invincibility. The war had finally been shifted from Christian grounds to the lands of the heathen. All of Europe, from the Pope to the Burgundians to the Venetians, rejoices, and the possibility of a large and robust crusade is looking ever more likely.